approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Jen. Second?
Second.
Thanks. Ruth, all in favor? Okay. Comments from the public? There's no one in the room. Is there anyone with a hand raise feature?
No.
No, there is not.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Mandy. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Jen. All in favor? Okay. Board chairs report. All right, mine is relatively short. I just wanted to say that I hope everyone had a good break and took the time to refresh and recharge. And I want to thank Dr. Smith and the whole staff and the families for making the transition to masks optional go smoothly. It's a wonderful and welcome step, and I look forward to hearing more about it tonight. Earlier this week, the Board of Ed met with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to tour some of our facilities, looking specifically at Wilton High School in Middlebrook, the lighting that's outdated and dim, the ceiling tiles that is showing their age, the threadbare carpeting, and while we didn't see them, there are 3 elevators that need replacing to keep up with code. The tour was followed by a tri-board meeting where we all agreed, I think, that all the work is needed and overdue. Long-term, the Middlebrook and Wilton High School projects and the elevator replacements, all in, will be around $5.2 million. The cost, of course, is the challenge, and there will be more discussion on how to phase it in and continue to find cost efficiencies. In the short and immediate term, we have approved our budget proposal, a total year-to-year increase of 3.3%, including $458,000 to begin the maintenance work. So I encourage everyone to be involved in the budget process this spring. The Board of Education is advocating for our budget proposal because it both supports our program needs and begins to address the Middlebrook and Wilton High School renovation projects. We can't diminish our programs nor continue to defer maintenance. The Board of Finance public hearing on the Board of Ed budget proposal is Wednesday, March 23rd. I hope everyone marks their calendars. And lastly, tonight I want to take a moment to remember Helen Martin, who was principal of Driscoll School beginning in 1969, way before Driscoll and Miller were joined in any sense of the word. She was principal for over 30 years. She had a memorable, commanding presence and style, and her dedication to students and their families was unparalleled. She inspired everyone, from first-day kindergartners to teachers to parents, and she was a great community spokesperson. Helen Martin focused all her immense energy and talents on implementing her vision of a thriving, vibrant, and happy elementary school. Thousands of our students benefited from their start at Driscoll. She was one of the founders of Wilton's reputation for educational excellence. So I hope in the future we can plan something appropriate in her memory, and I'll work with some of the staff on that. So thank you. That's my report. Superintendent's report.
Great. I have just 2 sets of acknowledgements. First, we received news a week or so ago that our 6 National Merit semifinalists are all finalists. So that's great news. So we want to thank Avery Baumel, Catherine Campbell, Gavin Fusco, Edwin Gregory, Ria Raghavan, and Ria Ranawala. We want to congratulate them and wish them best of luck as they proceed with the National Merit contest. And then also within the last week or so, we received the 2022 Scholastic Art and Writing Award announcements for our high school and middle school. And as always, our kids did very well. So we want to congratulate one of our high schoolers, Alexandra Giller, who won a gold key and best in ceramics for the state of Connecticut. So that was like top of the top. So she's going to participate nationally. We have a number of others who also earned gold and silver awards. So Charlotte Kazaragi in graphic design earned a silver award. Jessica Fang for painting earned a gold award. Colton Hall for ceramics earned a silver award. Bernie Huang in painting earned honorable mention. Jordan Huff earned 2 awards in AP 2D art and design, silver and honorable mention for photography. Kayla Kennedy earned a gold award in ceramics. Hunter Martin in photography also earned a gold award, as did Cindy Rodriguez. Meredith Mabied in the mixed media category earned a silver, and Amira Srivastava for sculpture also earned a silver. At Middlebrook, we had 3 award winners. Lindsay Ferguson earned a gold award, Derek Wang earned a silver, and Sam McDonald earned a silver. So congratulations to our artists. And you'll be hearing a lot from me, so I'm going to leave my report right there.
All right, that's wonderful. I'm not sure if we have student reports. Are they able to be here tonight?
So, I'm not
It's okay,
sure,
they might
yeah.
be at the game. We can wait till next time if that's.
Yeah, I don't know where the wires got crossed. We were expecting a group of students, so what I would say is, if they appear, we'll just pause the.
Sure, okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And I did, you'll have to excuse me, I
Oh,
did
I'm
have
sorry.
a COVID update, because it's not an item on the agenda.
We're
and so-
never putting it on the agenda again.
If you don't mind, I'll do my little bit here, because I think, it's a good news report, so
course, of
if you
course.
allow. So, to your point, and I think we were going to hear from our high school students, the report across the district this week has been very, very smooth. And so kids have been excellent to each other. They've taken the transition in stride. On the COVID front, our numbers have been very good. So we had, I think, a total of 12 cases reported across the week. I think Monday we had 8 coming right out of the break. Tuesday we had 0 reported. Wednesday we had 4. Today we had 0 reported again. And so that's all very good news. On the broader scale, the DPH was reporting for Wilton something like 11.7 new cases. They lagged 2 weeks, so we expect that number to decline. And COVID Act now is much more dynamic. They were reporting 8 new cases per day per 100,000. So the numbers are all very good and leading us toward an opportunity to, as expected, to roll back further mitigation strategies. So in the update we sent out tonight, we informed parents that we are going to revert back to our typical transportation routines. So this will be welcome news for many of our elementary parents who use our afternoon transportation to facilitate play dates and things like that. So we'll begin to implement that probably Monday. So the principals will put that information out about, especially for new parents who might not know how to go about using, I don't know if it's school dismissal manager, if there's another mechanism. So that's really good news. I think the next milestone date we're looking at is probably March 14th. And so we just, again, out of an abundance of caution, want to give the full 2 weeks to see if there's going to be any change in COVID numbers. But we're looking at walking back all of the mitigation strategies in music and PE, and so we'll revert to kind of pre-pandemic practices in those classes, and then we'll look at repopulating our cafeterias. So we'll have some change probably on that date. I'm meeting with the principals in the morning. I asked them to compile their list of activities that are still presently disrupted by COVID, rank order them, and so we'll just work on a plan to begin phasing in all of our kind of more normal,
So Kevin, would you
non-pandemic
begin
activities.
phasing that in on March 14th or begin now for March 14th?
We're going to talk tomorrow. So, I think the first change that we've already, been able to make is the buses. And then I would look at the cafeterias probably beginning on March 14th.
Got it.
But we haven't, in fairness, I haven't had a chance
Right.
to speak to them yet.
Right.
And certainly the COVID numbers support that right now.
Yep.
Do the kids in the upper schools at least still have access to outside areas during lunch if that's something
They
that
do, yeah.
that they're inclined to take up on?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, that's all moves in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Good. Committee reports. Anybody meet yet?
We skipped last time. Do you want us to go back?
Oh, that's
over
right, I'm
what we
sorry,
did?
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Teaching and Learning met back in February 8th. We talked about a few things. One of them was the Middlebrook schedule, which we're going to wait until next week to see what happens. I think it's just to update the rest of you. At this point, if a decision is not made by next week, everything will stay as is.
For
It's
next
just
year.
not fair for the teachers. They're not going to have enough time to plan the curriculum changes or whatever that would have to happen to accommodate a block schedule. So they are working and working. They had another great rendition of a schedule, and but there's holes in it, and right, so they're trying to outweigh the pros and the cons of how many you're going to make a huge change, and how many things that we want to get are we going to get, and how many things are we going to give up or still not be able to get?
Right.
So that's what they're still working on. I know for some of us that seems like this should be an easy task, but it truly is not. So I know our public is going to think that why can't you do this? But it's been a lot, and they've really been trying. So, Jory, I don't even know if you're on.
I sent him to the basketball game to help
Good idea.
with the staff, so he's not on.
We'll find out next week. We also talked again about the Wilton High School reading materials. Eric Mendelsohn was able to compile a list for 11th and 12th grade, and we talked about posting it someplace on the website so that everybody would have access to. And just a reminder, it's not an exhaustive list. There can be changes, there can be additions, but at least it's a great starting point for people to have one place to look at. And the last thing was about professional learning. Chuck had a great presentation about just going basically truly every line item, just trying to explain to us, what the professional learning ideas or options, opportunities are for each school. So it was nice for us to have a better understanding of what that was. And tomorrow begins the digital learning and STEM curriculum review. So it's our first of 3. That's it.
Great, thank you. The business ops did not meet in policy, did you meet?
We met previously, we didn't meet this week, but we met also on
Oh,
February.
okay, yeah, so go back to February, sorry.
So-
Yep.
And we continue to work on a DEI policy that's being shopped around to some different administrative constituents in the various buildings and others. And in addition, we did a review of the bylaws just to see if practice conforms to actual writing. And that was the main focus of our activities.
Okay, thank you. On to review and discuss Hall of Fame, which I think is
Yeah.
good news.
So, great news.
It's a tradition that is now how many years old?
So we started, I think 4 years ago was the first Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And we've had.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, Chris Finkelstein's legacy
Yes.
here. We had one class inducted, and then, of course, COVID interrupted that. So I'm pleased to announce we have another class of inductees, and if you'll allow me, just for the good of the order and the
Yeah,
public, I'm going to just take a
absolutely.
couple minutes
This
and
is a big deal.
remind people what the Hall of Fame is, and then I'll share with you who the inductees will be. So our policy reads this way. From time to time, members of the Wilton Public Schools community have distinguished themselves in ways that have brought great honor and pride to our community. This includes teachers, students, and staff members who have in some way achieved notoriety in their chosen area of expertise. Such individuals may have attained national recognition or in some way been recognized by their peers for outstanding achievement. Those fields may include, but are not limited to, education, business, legal service, politics and government, military service, athletics, theater and the arts, philanthropic endeavors, and community service. To honor these individuals, a Hall of Fame will be established. Induction into the Hall of Fame will be reserved for only those individuals who have truly distinguished themselves and shall be regarded as a highly coveted honor. To be inducted, a candidate must be nominated in accordance with the following procedures, which are detailed in the policy, meet a rigorous set of criteria, and pass rigorous evaluation process by the Hall of Fame Review Committee. Inductees will be honored with a personalized plaque that will be displayed in perpetuity in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame inductees will be announced annually by the Chairman of the Board of Education, or the Superintendent in this case. So the standards are high. And we had, reached out to the community and solicited nominations. The committee is comprised of Debbie as board chair, myself, the principals, the PTA presidents, and then 2 at-large members of the community. And so the process is to review the policy, to examine the applications, to ensure that each of the applicants kind of meet the standards, and then really to discuss, whether or not each of the candidates fit. And so we have 2 categories. One is Hall of Fame, and that's really reserved for alumni of our school. And then for staff, we have Service with Distinction Award. And so in this class, we have 2 Hall of Fame and 2 Service with Distinction recognitions. So the first is longtime resident, volunteer, and varsity golf coach Jack Majeski. So Jack is being recognized with the Service with Distinction Award. He was nominated by one of his former students, Andrew Sommier, and so we had a neat moment right before the holiday break in December. Andrew was home from school, and so we invited him into the high school, invited Jack over, didn't tell him why we were asking him over, and Andrew got to inform him of his nomination and induction. So it was wonderful, and I personally, I've met Jack a couple times. I don't know him well, but he is revered, and Andrew is one of these young men who spoke so eloquently about Jack's impact on him and his colleagues, and so we had a number on the committee who also were very familiar with Jack's philanthropic activities. So I think he, I don't know if he founded the Wilton Ambulance Corps or Wilton CERT, but he's been heavily involved in kind of the emergency response community here in town. He's been coaching our golf team for 10 years. He's a Navy veteran of the Korean War and just very present in the community. Here's what Andrew, wrote about him. He wrote, "Coach not only teaches the game of golf, but he imparts life lessons and important values. He instills the importance of good character as his priorities include not only improving golf skills, but also teaching respect, hard work, and balancing priorities. Coach's legacy of service extends far beyond the walls of our school," and then Andrew goes on to kind of just list some of his accomplishments. So we're thrilled to be able to recognize Jack Majeski with this honor. Our second recipient of the Service with Distinction recognition is our current 8th grade writing teacher, Mr. Paul Schluntz. And so Paul, again, is unbelievable. So he was nominated by a group of colleagues at Middlebrook. I don't know if you know, Paul is a 43-year veteran here in our system. I don't think he's quite the longest serving at this point. I think he's like the second longest serving. But, Paul, yeah. It's close, though. So he is.
I thought he would be. He shot my son. I thought he would have been the oldest.
Yeah.
But there's another.
And so he, again, I mean, to know him, right? You just know what he is about as a human being and as someone who is, just incredibly influential on the lives of others, as a teacher, as a coach, as a friend, as a mentor. I had the very good fortune of having my now freshman daughter in his writing class last year, and we had a moment, she's going to go nuts when she hears about this. She and a couple of her friends were at our house at the summer, and they were talking about this transition to 9th grade and talking about Paul and some of the other 8th grade teachers, and they all were like weepy. And so she'll write to him, he writes back. I mean, this is what he does, right? He makes these indelible connections with kids, and they last forever. And so, he's incredible. One of the nominators is a columnist for Forbes magazine, and so she wrote an article about him back in 2015 titled "The 5 Essential Leadership Lessons from a Beloved Teacher Who Has Inspired Thousands." And I looked at these and I thought these capture kind of what he's about. So and these are interesting, like kind of his lessons. So for Paul, this is what he says: "Teaching that the greatest pleasure, reward, and value are found in those endeavors where we apply ourselves fully from the heart in an attempt to grow, stretch, and learn and become better. Feeling and sharing the thrill of seeing someone else succeed because of what you did. Knowing that the truly great moments in your life are watching others thrive and shine, and in that is the great thrill and at the same time sadness because it's impossible to give to words to that amazing feeling or express it adequately." And then 2 more. "Most of the time, people appreciate things about you more than you realize." And then his last kind of lesson is, "When you have faith in people, that makes them stronger." So his whole orientation is to other people.
So great.
And, right, what an incredible service. So our next Hall of Fame inductee is Lieutenant John G. Corr, who, that's a name you might know. John G. Corr was a class of Wilton High School, 1962, who was killed in action in Vietnam. One of the most distinguished recognitions a student can receive coming out of Wilton High School is the Corr Award, and that was established in his name some years ago. And so there's a whole community that organizes around that, and they select a student every year. What was written about John was that as a student, he was both a prominent and versatile athlete who excelled here at the high school in football, basketball, and track. He was the star quarterback on the football team that won the 1961 WCC championship, and then earned praise from coaches and officials for his sportsmanship, and was widely recognized for his strength of character and integrity. And when you hear the core committee talk about, what he valued, it's character and integrity that they speak about the most. So when Lieutenant Court graduated at the high school, he attended the University of Bridgeport and majored in physical education. While he was at UB, he also had a distinguished athletic career, and then upon graduation in 1966, he joined the military and graduated from the United States Marine Corps Basic School in Quantico. That was in June 67, and then he left for Vietnam later that month in 67. In 6 months of service in Vietnam, Lieutenant Corps was awarded 2 Purple Hearts, although I read he was eligible for a third, a Bronze Star with Combat V, a Gallantry Cross with Palm, and a National Order of Vietnam 5th Class. So he was heroic and clearly decorated, and someone that this community can obviously look up to. So we're thrilled to be able to honor and recognize Lieutenant Corps with the Hall of Fame induction. And our last inductee is retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Jennifer Fulmer. She's a Wilton High School graduate of 1985. Colonel Fulmer retired from the Air Force in September 2015 after 24 years of honorable service. During her last assignment, she served as Chief, Advanced Strike Requirements Division, Headquarters, Air Combat Command, with duty at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. This position serves as Air Combat Command's requirement lead for the Air Force's $70 billion Top 3 Priority Long-Range Strike Bomber program. Colonel Fulmer received her commission in August of 1991 through the ROTC program at the University of Northern Colorado. She commanded the 9th Bomb Squadron in garrison and combat, and has served in a variety of operational and support positions. Prior to her last assignment, she served as Vice Commander of the 379th Air Expeditionary Wing in Southwest Asia. That wing included strike, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, mobility, aeromedical evacuation, and command and control assets which support Operation Enduring Freedom. Colonel Fulmer is a command pilot with more than 2,500 flight hours, 90 combat missions over Afghanistan and Iraq during Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. So another highly distinguished Wilton High School alumna who is clearly deserving of this great recognition. The induction ceremony will take place at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, May 24th in the Zellner Gallery. The public is invited. The last time we had this event, it was one of the truly the finest events I think I've personally participated in, so I'm really looking forward to this next one. And clearly we have some great inductees. So.
Our student delegates are on the Zoom right now.
Oh, they are. They're okay. Great.
All right.
Good. Okay. It's good
Yeah,
timing.
That's like good timing. So anyway, that's really wonderful news and a great tradition to have started, and we'll see everybody May 24th. Perfect. All right, so students, so thank you for coming to us tonight. I know there may be a couple of conflicts tonight, so I appreciate your time. We asked you here because we wanted to hear student voices. Last year we heard student voices, maybe a little bit later in the year, but sort of moving through rather extraordinary times. And then this year was another extraordinary time, different and challenging in some ways, and hopefully wonderful in some ways. So we wanted to sort of hear your perspective on the year, what you've learned from your experiences, what you think went well, what you think perhaps, if anything, we could do better, could have done better, what you're looking forward to. So I'm kind of casting a wide net, but it is about sort of, how are you meeting the challenges of this particular year? So whoever wants to start.
Go ahead, don't be shy, we just need somebody to
Yeah.
unmute.
Yeah.
I can't read names, so.
Is Catherine on there?
Avery.
Okay, I guess I'll go.
Hi.
Thank you.
There.
So I think this year compared to last year, especially with everyone in, it's been a lot more engaging, I think. I'm able to see my friends every single day, which is really, really good for my mental health. I forgot the questions, but I am really, really looking forward to, let's see. We're having our junior prom in May, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Great, thanks, Joy.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Avery, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I also think it's been really great to see all of the students kind of coming together to do things to get us that little way back to normal. I know there are certain things that everyone gets really excited about, so I know the seniors really wanted to have the jungle back as a space for us to sit and hang out, and then seeing everyone like making sure we were following the rules in order to get that space. It's just been really great to see that everyone is really committed to following those rules and making sure that we can maintain those spaces in a safe way, especially because like in past years, those have been kind of a little bit crazy. But I think everyone, like the entire school community, has really been trying to do what's been asked of us and make sure that we can have those like littler things. Like Joy mentioned the prom, which is like a huge thing that everyone's been really looking forward to last year and then again this year. But even those smaller things like the jungle or tables in the cafeteria have just made such a difference, and I think everyone's been really excited about like getting those opportunities back slowly as we get to a more normal state of being.
Great.
Yeah, here, do you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead, Skylar.
So as a freshman, I think me and all the freshmen can agree, it was really, really nice to join the Wilton High School community in a way that we were able to meet people from other grades and not be so confined to like a single group of students, and just be able to travel around the school and really get to know it for like what it is instead of kind of a less, like a smaller version of it, which is kind of how it was during COVID. So I think all the freshmen really, really appreciated that. And then I think since we've dropped the mask mandate, a lot of my friends have noted that it's just the school seems so much brighter, being able to see people smile. I think people really love that.
Yeah, so I can go next. Just as a quick aside, I'm sorry for my boundaries. I'm still in the school because I'm in late night clubs, so if I glitch out or anything, sorry about that. But so I'm Sean, and I'm a sophomore this year, and I think I've been placed, or my position right now is a rather unique one because I didn't actually know the school before COVID or before the pandemic hit, and so I've actually been able to quite visibly see how like this year changed more than last year. And in agreement with all the other students who spoke, I think that the biggest thing I've noticed is like just this sudden resurge of school spirit, taking pride in Wilton High School. And I think, like Avery said, this is seen in the little things, like in the cafeteria, just talking to people, new connections with teachers. And I also see it in bigger things like homecoming, prom. Well, I'm not in prom, but I'm assuming prom. And even, just like the sports games, like the FCI championships are going on right now. I'm pretty sure they sold like an insane amount of tickets, like something in the 1000s. So just the idea, I think that the school coming out of the pandemic, or I wouldn't say we're out of it, but with the lifting of the mask mandate and things like that, just been a sudden resurge of a school community amidst teachers and students alike, and that's something that I really didn't notice last year, and I'm really happy we had back this year as a sophomore going to junior year. In terms of the mask mandate, I also believe that the mask mandate went really well. I think that students are respecting decisions whether to wear masks or take them out, irrespective of their own choices. And I also think, as an important note, that, something I've noticed is that even students who don't wear masks are still careful to, observe protocol. They're not reckless with COVID protocols, is what I would say. And so I would say that irrespective of wearing masks or not wearing masks, students across the community are still concerned with and thinking about safety procedures that will then apply to the rest of this year and the future beyond.
Great. Any questions from us?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Any updates on who's winning the game? Does anyone have a Twitter?
Can I just ask one question? If you were to sort of look back and, can you imagine like 10 years from now, what would you say you might have learned from this experience, or what was your biggest challenge, or what might have had the biggest impact on you?
I can still, oh, you can go, Sean.
Oh, okay. So if I had to look back on this in 10 years, I would honestly say that the thing that stuck out most to me, or the thing that I have learned the most, is about the perseverance of what people can do when they're together, or just like the resolve that everyone has when they put their minds to a certain task. And again, like I said, I came to the high school in the pandemic, and as a freshman, obviously I was sad that I don't get to experience what the high school was like. But I still think that the idea that we got through the entire school year, we were remote some parts, we were in cohorts other parts, and then we finally were back to full students in person. I think the idea that we were able to navigate that and navigate that, the ups and downs that came with it, and the idea that as a school community we came together, teachers and students alike, like I said, and rode the wave of the pandemic and of the virus, I think that was really incredible to watch, or incredible to be a part of. And I think if I looked back on this 10 years, that's what I'd be most proud of myself, my peers, and just the entire community for doing.
Great, thank you.
I think I'd also talk about like spirit and resilience, and just sort of the way that we've all come together to make this a more positive experience, or at least as positive as we can make it. Especially in the beginning of the year, I think it was very weird to be back, like everyone in person. A lot of people felt that way. And then we sort of got back into the swing of things, and what stuck out to me the most was just how much people were trying to make this like engaging and exciting and bringing back the traditions that we've all missed so much. And so like, especially during Spirit Week and homecoming and all of that, like people were just 110% every single day, whether it was like showing up in fun themes or decorating the school or things like that. And I think that kind of having those like really exciting moments where everyone's able to sort of come together and show our spirit and have that community together. It's always fun in any year, but especially with COVID, I think it was something that really allowed us to sort of get through this year, was knowing that we had this community and that we were all kind of so proud of everything we've done and will continue to do. And I think when I look back, I'll remember that excitement the most.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think kind of remembering that we have the ability to adapt to so many things that we were put through is something that I think I'll really remember in 10 years. If you told me 5 years ago that's the idea of learning all online or learning in cohorts would have happened, I would have been like, oh, that doesn't make sense. How would that work? But as a school and as almost as a nation and a world, we were able to adapt to these changes and do the best that we could. And I think overall they worked really well. And we're now able to, as Avery and Sean said, bring back our school spirit, bring everyone back into school and do some of those fun activities. And so I think that's something that I'll remember for a long time.
Great, well, wonderful, and thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and go find the game. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your
Thank
wonderful
you.
job representing your classmates,
Yeah.
as always. So we appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Yeah, very thoughtful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Wonderful. Okay, curriculum update. I asked Kevin just very quickly to sort of update us, because we do have these monumental things going on in the world, and how are our students being presented, and sort of what's the pulse, and what are teachers trying to accomplish. So is that for Chuck?
Perfect. Yep. So Chuck's going to take this piece.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, as we all know all too well, Russia's invasion of the Ukraine has dominated the news over the past week, headlining newspapers and news shows. And we can't and probably shouldn't shield our students from seeing or hearing about the harsh realities of what's going on in Eastern Europe. And whether we like it or not, they are watching. I don't want to overstate this, but if you think about it, these must seem like very terrifying times to our students. They have experienced so much the past few years with the pandemic and various other social difficulties and problems. And then add to that a war in Europe and talk of potential nuclear conflict. It must seem, at least to some of our students, like the world is on fire and there's no safe place. I think, in fact, it would be hard to overstate the precariousness of this moment for our students and, in fact, for all of us. So the question becomes, how can teachers and parents support students in understanding current events, especially when those events are unfolding in real time and may involve disturbing or distressing information, and perhaps may also involve misinformation or disinformation. I think that the answer begins with an understanding that it will have to depend on the age and developmental levels of the students and what their needs and questions are. We also need to recognize how difficult it can be to try to help our students make sense of a conflict that we ourselves are trying to make sense of. In a way, it's almost as though we are being called on to be instant experts on geopolitical conflict and international relations. So I think it's really important to allow ourselves some space and grace around this topic and to rely on what we know about how to help children process complex and unsettling information. We're very fortunate here in Wilton to have teachers who have some experience doing just that. Whether it's navigating big, thorny social issues or even local tragedies and crises, our teachers have the knowledge and the various tools, resources, and supports at their disposal to help our students through these difficult times. So what might that look like? For our younger students at the elementary level, they frankly just do not have the background knowledge necessary to really understand the complexities of foreign affairs or foreign policy decisions. Their social studies units focus on local and to some extent state government. When students at this age see and hear things, either in the news or from older siblings or even on social media, and especially when those things involve violence, the first job of the teacher and the parent is to reassure them that they are safe and to reassure them often. And I would actually go so far as to say that that applies to students of all ages. But our approach with this particular age group is very similar to our approach to what happened on January 6th, 2021. And that is to reassure and discuss issues as they arise, taking care to shepherd the students in and out of the discussion safely. For older students, teachers have been trained to use protocols to safely frame discussions about current events as they unfold. Things such as the breaking news protocol from a book called The Civically Engaged Classroom, or the Safely In, Safely Out protocol from the Anti-Defamation. These tools can help students to identify first what people are saying and thinking, as well as what sources of information they're relying on, what we know for sure, and what we still don't know. And these sorts of activities can set the stage for further discussions about what comes next. The thing about crises is that they not only illustrate the depths to which humanity can sink, but they can also illustrate the heights to which it can soar. In other words, helping students to see that there is not just darkness, but also light in darkness. By changing the emphasis, focusing on life instead of death, lightness instead of darkness, students will encounter stories of human spirit that can inspire them, especially in difficult times. And this is how we try to approach many challenging topics, including the Holocaust, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, for our older students, we can begin to leverage their background knowledge to explore some of those geopolitical and foreign policy issues. But again, we need to be mindful of their readiness. Some students may need to focus on other things first. And I can give you an example. One high school teacher shared with me that her seniors were very concerned about being drafted into the war. And so she felt it was important to try to address that issue first, because that was topmost in their mind before they started talking about history or politics. I think, as you can imagine, certain social studies units or courses lend themselves more easily to working in these types of discussions, but we encourage teachers to use their professional judgment in deciding whether current events should take precedence over current curriculum plans. I know that at both the middle school and high school, teachers are either in the midst of or are planning for activities that will help students process current events in Ukraine, including geography, history, the politics of the region, the conflict chronology, and I think most importantly, how to use media literacy skills to access and evaluate information. And just anecdotally, it seems as though media literacy is the most pressing challenge for our teachers and students right now. Students are getting some pretty unreliable information on social media, especially TikTok. And it's just disheartening to see how these platforms are being used mostly by adults to spread misinformation. But again, fortunately, our teachers are on top of this and are working hard to make sure students have the knowledge and skills they need to cope effectively with this unfortunate situation. And lastly, I just wanted to share with you that I spoke earlier today with Kim Zemo, and she and I are planning to develop a communication to families on how parents may be able to talk to their students about things like war and what's going on in the Ukraine. And we'll try to get that out within the next few days. Any questions?
Chuck?
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can also provide, perhaps in that discussion going out to parents, some tools for them to help their children with media literacy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
To add that
Yes.
to the conversation, so parents have some
Absolutely.
tools to help their kids navigate that at home as well?
That's a great suggestion. I'll loop Fran in on the discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
The only other piece that I would add is we have families in this community who are either Russian or Ukrainian, and they have extended families. And so, over the course of this week, we've heard a number of stories about close connections. And so I think, you heard, from Chuck just thematically this idea of sensitivity, so sensitivity to the topic, sensitivity to our kids and their readiness to handle this information, but also sensitivity to our community members who are being directly impacted.
I know that one of our social studies teachers at the middle school actually reached out to some of our families from the Ukraine and Russia and is trying to invite them into the discussion in this classroom about what's going on there, which I think is a wonderful way, again, to kind of think about how we can look for the silver linings in that very difficult situation and show, kind of demonstrate for the kids that we can always have hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to get a glimpse, sort of into the school world in the midst of, this global crisis. So thanks for putting that together so quickly, and please send us updates, if appropriate. Yeah. And once again, please thank our outstanding teachers. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Digital learning update.
Great. So
Fran.
we have the amazing Fran Compar with us, who's going to take us for a brief walk back in time to set the stage for actually what's going to happen tomorrow. And this is something we've been working on for years, and hopefully you'll see the through lines as we've built our program here. But Fran, welcome, and thanks for taking us through this tonight.
Well, thank you, and good evening, everyone. We have a presentation that we're going to show, and actually Harrison is going to share it and actually also help me out with advancing it. So this basically is, as Kevin was saying, a story of where we've been, where we are today, and where we're going. And before I actually start, I wanted to thank lots and lots of people who are really part of the story. Our very talented staff in our library learning commons, our tech ILs, our student interns, our IT team led by Eric Hawkinson, and of course our teachers who have been instrumental in this story. So going on to the next slide, I'm going to go through an introduction and then take you through 6 goals that we've put together in terms of moving forward with our plan, and then highlight some things that are going on currently within our schools and within our work. So let's start with the next slide, which will bring us to our story. So even though it seems like a very long time ago, we're going to go on to the next slide, and we're going to basically begin with year 1 of our Digital Learning Ready Access program. So that was 2017-18. And those were the years where I'd come here, and I was very proud to announce that Wilton Public Schools was a Ready Access digital learning district. And we rolled out the one-to-one, we rolled out a whole plan. Before I actually go into the curriculum and the other parts of it, I actually wanted to invite my colleague, Eric Hawkinson, because without what he did, none of what I'm going to talk about would be possible. So, Eric, if you'd like to talk about the infrastructure.
Thank you, Fran. The infrastructure is something that we've been working on for the last 5 years. The year before we started our digital learning and ready access program, we were able to address some of our access issues with firewalls and some switching, and are increasing our internet bandwidth to start to put down the foundation. And what's happened over the last few years is we've been able to strategically upgrade our wireless and our switching and our infrastructure and our computers to allow them to become a foundational piece to support the Ready Access digital learning program. So every year we have updates that we work on strategically, and we use the budget to maintain, manage, and move that mission forward. So with our infrastructure, it allows us to support the work of the district. So thank you, Fran.
Sure.
All right, hold on a second, because people have forgotten. 2 minutes. When Eric started here, we had an archaic system. And so this was even before we'd engaged him, kind of full time. He walked every classroom, every corner of this building, and then when we fully engaged them, they ran miles of Cat5 cable. And Eric is selling himself short because he sat with me and laid out a 10-year plan to upgrade our infrastructure with costs, with devices. And part of the vision, even, pre-2017, was to move to mobile devices. And so part of the strategic plan was to do away with all of the desktop solutions that teachers had and replace them with laptops, and eventually move to Chromebooks and BYOD here at the high school. So the infrastructure that required, he just totally glossed over that. My first year, I can say this lightly now because we're in light years, I got a petition from the high school in 2015 entitled Technology, because they were so fed up with the crummy conditions of our infrastructure. And our goal at the time, when I first met Eric, was to stop talking about technology. We wanted it to live in the background. And I emphasize this point because we've just come through a pandemic where we flipped to fully remote. We leaned on all of our digital devices last year, and it hasn't been perfectly smooth, but frankly, we're not talking about technology, right? The infrastructure and what's not working, because it works beautifully. We laid out a plan to have wireless at the stadium, wireless outside at Middlebrook and the high school, and again, depending on how many cars are in the parking lot using it, it's there. Right? And that wasn't even a thought in 2015. So we just need to recognize that because of the work he did, we could jump right into the demands of the pandemic, and that is not what happened in many, many school districts. So sorry for the interruption, but
No, please.
Needs to be said.
Of course, I totally agree. And like I said, what follows here would not have happened without that foundation. So when we rolled out a curriculum as well. We rolled out a district-wide digital citizenship curriculum based on common sense media, units in K-5 that were really specific to technology, digital citizenship, and you'll see later we actually have begun doing computer science and STEM classes as well, along with the literature and the things that we normally have done. We also have a theme throughout the entire time, and I'm going to just say, you'll see it around the room here, it's been students as leaders. Students were critical in our planning and our execution of a really solid plan that was, and you'll see later, recognized nationally. Our tech interns not only were part of the deployment of the devices, they helped me with planning, going to workshops for parents, developing the website, developing the FAQs, and actually just giving us advice on to how best to do this. So you'll hear more about this, but our students became really our partners in this entire story. So going on to year 2, you'll see that we're going on to 2018 and 19. And many of you will remember a lot of conversation about the libraries and how those needed to also evolve with our philosophy and how we believed things actually should function within what we call the learning hub of the school. And so we began by redesigning Miller Driscoll in 2018-19. That rolled out. We have a beautiful LLC at Miller Driscoll right now, and we began doing the planning for Cider Mill. It was going to be a district-wide plan, which we actually did put together. Our curriculum continued, and we added transdisciplinary experiences in our K-5 classes, which basically integrate several different curriculum areas and include lots of skills, application, project-based. And we also had a global classroom experience in 5th grade where our students in 5th grade actually worked with and collaborated with students across the world. That year, we were recognized nationally, like I said, as the best library program in the state. We won Administrator of the Year. Dr. Smith won the state award and also later went on to win the national award. We presented at Iste and Castle and won 10 awards for our video production, and also were published in several different high visibility journals. So going into 2019-20, as you can probably imagine, the momentum was high. We basically continued the transformation of the LLC, introduced Cider Mill, and when that was unveiled, it was just unbelievable. It was beautiful. We had the Board of Ed actually come in and actually take a tour of it and do one of our meetings there. We also started the year with a breakout EDU with all of our staff members to begin talking about what we were going to bring to you guys as Portrait of the Graduate. We also that year then implemented a class in 9th grade for digital literacy that all our 9th graders take. And we continued refining units so that we have coding and design in our K-5 classes. And we did our pre-assessment for our digital literacy skills that year. So going on to, oops, nope, it wasn't year 4, it was year 3 3/4. So let's go on to the following year. And you'll see that we did get to year 3, and we had that high momentum, and we basically stopped a lot of things and turned things on its heels as the rate of change shifted, and it became, instead of every year, the change was about every week, and a lot of people might say it was actually every day. So you'll see that even by week, we began by having to engage in massive amount of PD for our teachers, securing online tools, curriculum, and ebooks and audiobooks, and then beginning to procure some of the things that made it possible for us to have the remote learning, hybrid, et cetera, like Zoom. Zoom, by the way, in March 27th of 20th was the first Board of Ed meeting on Zoom. We didn't have it before then. And so we provisioned it, and we sent out guidelines, expectations, strategies on its use. We had policies, procedures, and then by the end of that period of emergency lockdown and e-learning, we adopted a new learning management system, Schoology, which brought us into that summer of getting ready for a brand-new year that was going to be very different than what we originally had planned. So going into the next 2 years, and I kind of put them together, remember going into last year, there was lots and lots of preparation and a monumental feat on the part of our teachers in order to get ready for it. They had to learn a new learning management system, like I said, Schoology. They had to learn how to use cameras, document cameras, and Zoom, and also negotiate remote and hybrid learning. They had to intentionally create courses for that online environment. You don't just put up things. You have to actually organize them. You have to have updates, learning targets, assessments, and curate resources in order to do that. We ran multiple parent workshops for Schoology and for the tools so that parents could be partners. And we created modules on digital citizenship on Zoom, Schoology, and other tools for students and for teachers so that they could be referred to. Formally, we ran 60 hours of professional learning, but that was formal. On paper, that's what it looked like. In actuality, there were many, many, many more hours. We did, as we continued going through the year, unearth what I call collateral benefits, those silver linings that came out of it. One, I think, is our WTV team that basically had to become the eyes and ears during the pandemic, and everything was streamed. So our sports and our, everything was then went from very little streaming to everything being streamed. And that, as you have seen, has carried over. So there were good things that actually carried over into this year that we have to keep in mind. So going into basically what is this year, we're beginning to it starts feeling a little bit more normal, right? So we've adopted the portrait of the graduate. We're doing the good work of that in terms of our curriculum reviews and refresh. And we are now looking at standards through that curriculum review that we're going to engage in beginning tomorrow. The Connecticut State has adopted the Iste Standards. The ASL, the American Association for School Librarian Standards, adopted in October. Computer Science Standards, Connecticut was the first state to adopt them. And recently, remote learning standards for grades 9 through 12 to provide opportunities for some students that might want to take a remote learning course. We have weekly production meetings with our WTV kids now so that we can review projects and really kind of make sure that we're managing all of the things that they're doing. Our wonderful Wilton Educational Foundation people have given us a grant, and we are beginning to add the resources that we need in our makerspaces across the district. You'll be very happy to know that in our libraries, circulation has gone way up this year for both text and ebooks. So the text has come back. And then we have done a lot of work with the portrait of the graduate and the capstone at the high school as students have been putting together their e-portfolios. So that's in a real quick, the last 5 years. Incredible amount. So I'm going to go on to what we are now resetting as our new normal and what our next chapter in our story looks like. And we've, in this, the digital learning goals really are based on an established framework called Future Ready Schools. The state has actually adopted this, and in the next year is going to have district cohorts working on their planning documents for digital learning based on these pillars that I'm going to actually talk about. So the first one is Digital Learning Goal 1 is curriculum instruction and assessment. So in this area, our goal really is to continue writing and implementing and refining our curriculum for information, media, digital literacies, and STEM literacies. The way that we're going to do that is through our curriculum review that begins tomorrow. There will be 3 meetings. Part of it is reviewing the research, looking at best practices and gap analysis, and in terms of my goals is I'd like to see a pathway for STEM careers to be formed so that we have a sequence for computer science, information technology, and digital media, as well as implementing some assessments that we had to stop because of the pandemic and pick those up again. We'd like to build on what we've already done for transdisciplinary learning projects and make sure that they reflect the attributes of the portrait of the graduate, and continue developing assessments in areas like computational thinking. So going on to goal 2, that's a continuation of what we've been doing for professional learning. As you can tell, we've done a lot. Our tools are being used way more than they have in the past. I just put in like a little graph in there so that you have an idea of, in Schoology, the stats of the use of this year. There are different elements in Schoology, so you can create a page, you can create a discussion, you can create an assignment. So like all these different elements are different things that are kind of tracked in the usages. And so, as an example, our teachers across the district have created 131,195 pages in Schoology. That's a lot of content, so all the pages may have like resources in them, information, their lessons, etc. In terms of assignments, straightforward, those are assignments, 120,009. And then for discussions, interactive type of discussions that take place online, students may do at home or even maybe in the classroom, over 25,000. So going on to goal 3, this is one of the areas that I think is just so important. We found more and more over the last couple of years that our parents are critical partners, and especially as it came to remote learning and what we were doing, we really, really needed to do this. But think about, even past that, think about, this idea of having to teach students media literacy. I have a stat from one of the studies that 80% of middle schoolers in a recent study couldn't tell the difference between an ad and actual text. 80% couldn't tell the difference, which really basically tells us that although teenagers are really, really good on technology, they haven't really learned how to use it effectively in terms of things like media literacy. And so we have an obligation to make sure that our youngsters know how to do this better. And the best way to do this is to collaborate with some of our partners. So one of the things that we're doing right now is I've begun working with the Wilton Youth Council. They're doing the entire month on raising awareness of digital media, social media in general. They're sponsoring an author, Diana Graber, who's actually very, very good. She's going to come in and do 2 workshops, and then we're going to follow up with some book studies along with that. We're also collaborating with PTAs and SEPTA and doing workshops in March on providing tools that will reach all learners. As always, you'll see that we had, I think I counted, there must have been 8 or 10 workshops we did just last year, and we've got several more upcoming. So I like to continue those types of relationships. So going on to digital goal number 4A, design spaces for innovation, is one of those parts of the framework, which I think we've been doing really quite well. We have our plans. We are at the point now where we'd be ready to do more with Middlebrook and the high school when the funds become available. But we've implemented beautiful spaces, I think, at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill, and we've begun making some changes in the other 2 schools as well. To 4B, providing flexible learning experiences. The first, I just really kind of need to explain that this is really brand new. The Connecticut State Department of Education released new standards, remote learning standards, last week. So really off the presses. So we're at the point now where I think we need to take a look at these standards in a smaller group do a little bit of research and studying and see what kinds of opportunities these may hold. They're specifically for high schoolers, and it could be a course, it could be more than a course. It depends on really what the group that we speak with decide would be best at this point. But just so you know, I worked on the team that actually put those standards together, and the state was very intentional in ensuring that the way that we proceed with it is quite, slowly. Small pilot initially, and then see how it works, and then continue. It's not a program where you're going to scale it largely right in the beginning. Then going to number 5, I'm going to speak to student data privacy, but then I'm going to have Eric speak about this goal and the next goal on robust infrastructure. So student data privacy, as you all know, has been really, really important part of what we do in terms of vetting apps and resources and making them available for all students and teachers. We have now an online system called Learn Platform. It really makes it much easier and much more transparent for everybody to see what's not only available, but what has been vetted and what's been approved and able to be used. So with that, I'd like to have Eric talk about the rest of it.
Thank you, Fran. For the district data management systems, we've spent the last couple of years, can we go back one slide? Just for district data management, we've spent the last number of years cleaning up a lot of our data in the district and centralizing our data into our student information system, which is PowerSchool. We're using PowerSchool to then feed a number of other systems across the district. So it allows us to update overnight all of our instructional tools, our Google accounts, and a number of other systems to allow students and staff to have access to the tools they need every day. We've also had a relatively robust cybersecurity training. We've had teacher training. We're doing spoofing and spam training. We've started with multi-factor authentication for staff, and we're all doing this to better secure our systems across the district. So the goal was really to make our data move seamlessly between systems, but also to make sure we secure it. Can we move on to goal 6? In the robust infrastructure, Dr. Smith, thank you very much for your comments earlier about our infrastructure and where we've come. As we look at our budget going into this next year and in the future, we want to continue to manage and maintain the systems and keep our equipment life cycles moving forward. We have life cycles of 3 to 10 years, depending upon the types of equipment that we're using. And our technology support has gotten to a position where the majority of our tickets are closed within 24 hours. So we really appreciate the ability to manage, maintain, and continue supporting the district. And having a robust, reliable infrastructure really allows us to help the district manage and maintain its systems and the day-to-day activities. Thank you, Fran.
Sure. So we're going to go to the highlights portion of the presentation, which is just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight in terms of the work that we're looking at right now in the next few months. And then I really wanted to kind of take you into a snapshot, a week in highlights across the schools in terms of what's going on with these areas. So going to the first, talked about the curriculum review, but let me just give you a little bit more of a preview of some of the work. So beginning with tomorrow, we're going to talk about issues and trends and how that really is going to inform what we need to look at in terms of, are we, does our program meet the needs of our students based on what is going on in the world. So there are going to be 3 issues that I'm going to be previewing for you here. The first is what is deemed, and I'll just go to the next slide because this way you can look at it. The first one is really called the new normal. They called it the new normal. So what's happened in the world in the last couple of years based on the fact that, we've all had to basically go online? Essentially what the studies say, and this is not going to be any surprise at all, is that by 2025, the world is much more tech-driven. It's tele-everything. What has really been ushered in is this idea of more tele-everything, telehealth, more health visits, up 20% in terms of those types of visits. Online shopping, lots more of that. I'm sure a lot of you can attest to that. More remote learning and remote work. Remote work is really changing a lot of things at this point. And that has become something where it's being talked about throughout all businesses, and more businesses are opting for either having remote workers or hybrid workers that do a couple of days in the office and the rest on remote. There was an acceleration of adoption of lots of different technologies, as you know, video conferencing, online learning, lots of different e-commerce type platforms. So that has happened. So I guess the question then becomes, with that changing landscape, how does that change what our students need to know and do? The second question is specifically about STEM literacy and what's going on in the future of work. So automation is changing the types of careers and jobs that are available to students as they graduate from here or further. There was one study that basically said that by the end of this decade, 50% of current jobs would be eliminated based on automation. We're in a new phase right now, which is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where all these new technologies that are emerging are doing things that we previously would have never thought. They're diagnosing illnesses, they're conducting surgery, and there's even a 3D printing of a bridge going on right now. And the types of skills that employers want really have to do with critical thinking, communication, presenting things clearly, and being able to work with others, and problem solving. And the final one is this overall question of what does it mean to be literate in today's world? And think about some of the things we just talked about about the media literacy and misinformation, disinformation. The technology has gotten more sophisticated. So algorithms and filter bubbles are what we live in. And so sometimes it's really hard to see anything but one point of view. So going on to the next one, you'll see a chart that basically talks about those top 10 skills. And you'll see that it's analytical thinking, learning to learn. Does this sound kind of familiar with something else that we've been working on? Resilience and, reasoning. So the work that we will be doing with Portrait of the Graduate really will actually tie into this very well. Then I do have kind of I'm not going to go through it, piece by piece, but we have the beginnings of STEM experiences throughout the district, but there is a need to take a real close look at it, take a look at what's missing, and actually make it so that it is a real pathway for students. And I have some information, again, there's enrollments for engineering and technology courses. There's good news about the AP computer science course, data structures, and, students are opting to take these courses and then also doing well. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that the actual AP computer science test course, our students have done well with them. But again, the question for the committee is going to be, is this, it's a track for some students, but is computer science and STEM such a limited track, or could it be bigger? We talked about the Portrait of the Graduate. The next step in this is actually drafting I can statements, which we're going to begin doing very, very soon, so that hopefully we'll have drafts to work with teachers on and get their feedback on by the end of the year. We will be convening a small group to take a look at those remote learning standards that I spoke about. And then I'm going to get to the snapshot, which I'm very excited about. So beginning with Miller Driscoll. Okay, so what's going on in Miller Driscoll this week? So remember, I did a snapshot. I didn't do the entire year. I just wanted to see what was going on. So this week, Miller Driscoll students are learning how to code. They're using Blockly and CoffeeScript, which is actually a form of JavaScript. And they're creating their stories with Book Creator. You may know that this week was Read Across America, Wednesday. Students were listening and responding to read-alouds and to each other with a school from Alaska. They're using Flipgrid to actually respond to each other. And of course, we've kicked off Women's History Month, which is this year, as well as Wilton Reads. Cider Mill. Okay. So first, they are talking about a visit that they had right before the winter break from the Wilton Library robotics team, came in and spoke to the fifth graders, demonstrated how they actually problem solved and used the design cycle and created their robots, and then had the fifth graders actually test them out. The coding unit that they're in the middle of, they're doing basic coding concepts, problem solving, and creativity. And they program their own sprite. And then, this is actually really exciting, and I think if we're able to do it, we'll go into it. A student team, a group of students, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of the student leadership, went to the leadership at the school and said they had this great idea. They wanted to create their own website, and the website was going to be about games, and games that they really like. So it became a conversation, and they brought me in. There were people from the school that talked to them, and we talked to them about digital and safety information. So they have an entire section now in their website about screen time and appropriateness, rating their games using common sense media, and really taking a look at and making good choices in terms of how and when to use games, which I thought was brilliant because this is coming from students to students. So this was this week. And then going to Middlebrook. They procured the resources to fund the AR/VR system from Middlebrook PTA, thanks to them, and 3D printing labs from WEF. And they've been working on that this week. They launched Women's History Month, kicked off Read Across America with a Wordle game, and our sixth graders were introduced to the SIFT method of evaluating sources for accuracy, authority, and coverage. And finally, snapshot of the high school. This week, they have been working, and you'll see the pictures in the spaces back on the side there, collaboratively. They have these great smart TVs, and they are researching, creating original infographics, and using ThinkLink to create hotspots. They've been doing 3D design and using Tinkercad, and they've been doing lots of research and inquiry. That's basically the snapshot of all of the schools. So I did that very quickly, but I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor for the types of things that are happening. There's just a lot more that needs to be done, but I am really proud of everybody and everything that they've been doing. So thank you with that. If you have any questions.
It was interesting to kind of recap what we did in March of that heavy lift that must have really, I'm sure we've all forgotten how that went, but that was amazing, how fast that happened and how fast you got up and running.
Yeah, it was a feat. Everybody chipped in, but
Yeah,
it was a definite, it was a lot of work and a lot of people's,
Amazing, just amazing.
yeah.
I have to say, I'm excited for the discussions to come about STEM pathways and kind of broadening out and maybe coalescing around an understanding of what exactly STEM means.
Yep.
And more of this idea of problem solving and not necessarily, a finite, disciplinary skill. So I think that work will be exciting to see how that works out.
This is going to be their world. Totally.
And it was disheartening for me to hear that 80% of students can't discern the difference between an ad and text. So,
How many kids did we ask?
well,
Not-
it was
not
a
our
national,
survey,
not
right?
our
No,
kids.
this was a
It was a
national
national
survey.
survey, wasn't, yeah.
So,
But just,
I feel better. I just meant it was our kids, and I was like, how many did you ask? I was
but
getting
just
a little
in,
concerned.
but just in general, for there to be kind of like a
Yes,
greater
but-
understanding and the need to partner, I think, with parents in the community at large, about how much information is out there and helping our kids make sense of it and absorbing it in a proper way. And
Right.
sometimes our kids have it and we don't even realize that they have it, and so making sense of what they're saying to us and being able to relate to them.
one of the other studies basically says that most teenagers get their news from social media. It's primarily not even Facebook, it's TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram.
Yeah, I would believe it.
Yeah. There's a whole lot, first of all, this is like a wonderful fire hose of information so far. But I'm just wondering, there's a lot about use and creativity, et cetera. What about the leadership piece? Like the future Facebook creators and, the kind of idea of manipulation, responsibility, profit, manipulation, algorithms, all of that. Any sort of
So the
delving into some of the...
entrepreneurial type of aspect of it.
Yeah,
right?
or even the,
The civic obligation that kind of goes along with it.
the societal obligations and responsibilities.
Yeah, now, one of the things that I think we definitely need to talk about as we look at this curriculum is a lot of the new technologies, whether they be, what we're talking about with the filter bubbles, but
Yeah.
artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
There's a digital ethical component to it that really needs to be part of the curriculum. It needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I was just reminded of the medical field, and you can do things, but should you?
Right.
So the same thing with technology. It's great, but there's always kind of
Right,
that dark side.
and are we going to get
Yeah.
to the point, and I think we're probably almost there, where robots are going to be more intelligent than us? They're just going to be smarter than us. We'll have,
Well, okay, then.
I'm already dealing with my
Our job is done.
8-year-old being
Yeah,
smarter
right.
than me. Forget about the robot.
Now a robot's
Now
gonna
a
be smarter
robot's
than
smarter than me.
But these are things that we would
Yeah,
have
no,
never
no,
really
these-
even thought about,
Yeah, these kind of ethical, moral dilemmas.
Yeah, and there are policies that need to be,
Yeah.
basically, there's gatekeepers that need to
Yeah.
be there. We've watched the tech giants go to this place where the filter bubbles are taking over how we think and what we think.
Sure.
And we really need to have a way that
No, I'm just wondering for these kids, are we teaching them?
Yeah,
Just opening up
I honestly
questions
think
and the
it's
awareness.
taught, but it's probably at this point, we have to look at the standards. The computer science standards have elements of all that,
Oh.
and as do the Iste Standards. But we need to make sure that all our units have conversations and discussions,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, just, okay. All right, well, terrifically exciting work, and, yeah, good stuff. Any questions,
Really great.
comments? And so this is a curriculum review that has a whole committee, is that it?
Yes.
Starts tomorrow. I
Okay.
started my list of questions. I will save them for tomorrow.
Okay.
Great.
Interesting time.
All right, well, thank you, it's a great introduction and a great kickoff.
Thank you for the
Thanks for
opportunity.
starting here. Okay. Let's get to the graduation date.
Yes, so on behalf of Dr. O'Donnell and the Wilton High School community, I am asking the board for a motion to set the graduation date for the class of 2022 as Saturday, June 18th, 2022.
Any time?
It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Right? No, so 2.
There's always that early afternoon or
Yeah,
late
so I would
afternoon debate.
save
so
the
that's
date.
all.
It would be my honor to so moved.
I was gonna say.
On behalf of
Nicola?
all of the parents of the class of 2022, thank you. I think I speak for us all. We're very happy with the proposed graduation date of June 18th.
Excellent.
So second.
Okay.
So much.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right.
7 out of 6.
Congratulations. We'll see you at graduation on the 18th of June.
Excellent. That's great. Okay.
It was so great last year.
It was awesome.
Yeah, we've got our dates for our next meetings. There are no public members here. Lucille, any online? She probably.
No, there are none.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned, and thank you, everybody. Anybody have a score?
I do. It's not good.
Okay.